You're tuned into RX Radio. Movement prescribed. Brought to you by Prescript.com. A personalized approach to keeping you healthy and making your best even better. Your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Jiunta.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of RX Radio. I feel like this is like letters from Shawshank. First off, hope you guys are enjoying the downtime. Maybe I'll re-speak. I don't like the word downtime. There is no downtime. There's just time. So what you choose to do with it's up to you. But I hope you guys are making the best of the time now forced upon you. Some of you probably need it, honestly, if you're anything like me. Take time, take inventory, take stock. And it kind of brings up, like, this is going to be a bit of a weird intro because it's going to be me yelling. I'm literally just in a bathroom right now with this voice recorder. I'm not on the toilet or anything like that, but something I wanted to talk about for a while, and I think now's a really good time to highlight, like, what it actually means to be grateful. Like, gratitude practice has been this thing that comes out, like, oh, there's like a research for gratitude practice. And it's like, yeah, it's this real like crunchy granola. Like, everyone sits around the fucking kitchen table singing kumbaya shit over how good things are and how good they got it. But these people, I don't see any of these people anymore. Like, you know, these Fitzbo fucking IG story, like, oh, you know, did my gratitude practice. Now I'm out for my walk. It's like, yeah, these are the same exploitative bastards that are fucking selling bullshit on the internet to people who can't afford it. And now they're trying to double down on their position and sell more crap. It's like, listen, if you can afford to make less and actually help people. You know what gratitude is? Gratitude's when the homie shows up with the baseball bat and says, yo, I need your help. Then you get up and you fucking do what you got to do. Like, that's gratitude. Like, people that will run through walls for you, that's gratitude, right? So it's not fucking saying grace over dinner. It's going down and buying your food from a fucking butcher rather than waiting in line at Sobeys or Kohl's or whatever fucking country, Safeway. Gratitude's not like, you know, posted on Instagram. Gratitude's like, you know, if you have a gym that you fucking like and they don't have memberships, but you can afford to siphon off like $30 a month to pay for that like mom and pop gym, you fucking do it. Like, that's what gratitude is. It's not just sitting around and talking about it. It's like, get your ass in gear. So it's something that like has nothing to do with anything. If I'm being honest, it's a weird time when you get to sit and start to contrast like how weird life is now compared to like 3 weeks ago. That's when I don't see much of that actually in practice, and everyone was talking about it, but no one's really doing it. And that's a thing. It's a principle action. It's not like a theory. So grateful am I that you guys are tuning into this. And if there's ever anything I can do to help personally, or Jiunta or Killian or Clem or Mark or Alora, like, you reach out and you fucking let us know. So hope you guys, in the spirit of gratitude, this episode is a different one, and I don't want it to be different as like some sort of stark contrast, but we have Kayla Mulvogue on the episode, who some of you may or may not know. I know her very well, as she's lived and traveled with me for the better part of the last 6 months, and just an interesting episode, just on contrast. Trying to bring as much value to the table as possible. And this is the time, right? Like, learning how to upskill your craft. And those people who spend their time on their craft right now and don't flinch and don't succumb to the pressure and the pinch of like, look, yeah, it's all tough times, man. Like, don't change your approach just because we're kind of going through a bit of a rough patch. You know, don't fall victim to that low-hanging fruit. Like, you know, stay from a business perspective, from your training perspective, stay planned. Like, someone tags you in 10 push-ups and 10 push-ups wasn't in your program for that week, don't do 10 push-ups, right? Like, stick to your guns. Like, have a plan, and it'll make it a lot easier not to succumb to that flinch. So on this week's episode, hope you guys enjoy. We are offering our level 1 course. If you guys are going to take the time to try and upskill, we've had a lot of people express an interest in joining that Prescript level 1 course. We're starting mid-April. And with that mid-April start, we're going to be doing weekly lectures through the entirety of 16 weeks. So this will be our summer semester as planned. So if you guys are interested, head over to www.pre-script.com. We can sign up for the level 1 course there. If you guys have any questions, you can head on over my Instagram, Jordan's Instagram, Killian's Instagram, or email. You can email me directly, jordan@themuscledoc.com. Classes are set to start the 14th of April. Again, there's no such thing as downtime, right? There's just time. So what you guys choose to do with it is going to play dividends. Like, this shit will happen again. And those of you who take the time to educate and upskill, and just not in the aspect of training, right? But like every facet, like take an inventory, take stock of where you're at. So when this shit happens again, you're not in the same place. These are really good consolidated, yardsticks of stress or markers of stress that allow you to contrast. Like, look, 4 years ago when this happened and there was this, social disruption, how was it that I reacted? Where was my business at? Where was my training at? Where were my relationships at? It's decisions you make now that are going to affect how you react to these things in the future. So if you guys are interested in, upskilling, spending some time with us, we're going to see some collaborations in the teaching, me and Jiunta, me and Killian. It's going to be, it's going to be fun. And I think that's probably one of the things I enjoy about it most. So yeah, it's good. It's challenging, but at the end of the day, we try to make it as fun as possible, kind of connect, our network. And I think that's the most valuable thing right now is having people to lean on within a network. And like we're seeing, shout out, if you guys haven't read it, do me a favor, go to Barbend, some great people over there. One of our PSL1 coaches, Kyle Mackey's the dude I actually used to train with. At Boss Barbell Club, went through the PSL1, wrote an article, got posted in Barbend, so super stoked off that. If you guys haven't checked out Unconventional Wisdom podcast with Darian Bates, she's PSL1 course. She's our PSL1 coach. She went through the course, just absolute gun of a trainer. She had Jeremy Dinkins, another Prescript level 1 coach, on their podcast. And it was just an awesome conversation. So it's awesome to see just the network that's built. So if you guys are looking to build, a better professional network, upskill, and have some fun while you do it in this time that we have sort of afforded to us or forced on us. Prescript level 1 up for sale now. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. All of Kayla's handles and stuff will be in the show notes. Highly recommend checking that out. And in how we digest content. The content she puts out is second to none, in my opinion. So hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you all next week. I'll tell you what, it's not a good roll in when you rock up to wherever it is you're going wearing oven mitts because you're afraid of skin cancer. Saw that on the way here. Some lady next to me was driving with oven mitts on.
I'm assuming she had the full face visor, face mask.
Yeah. What I love about that, because it's the obvious thing, it's like, oh no, don't worry, skin cancer will never kill you, because the 17-car pileup you're going to cause dressed like a spastic will definitely kill you before melanoma sets in.
I've seen that on the Deliveroo and the Uber Eats people. They've got their little mitts attached to their handlebars.
But that's not like a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like a little bit more exposed to the element. Like, this lady was rocking a Camry. It's like, just tint the windows. But she's sitting there with like the green accountant's visor on, and then she's got the sun visor down, and she literally had there was no dexterity in the fingers either. Like, they were mitts. There was like 4 going in, and you got the thumb, and that's it.
Maybe she was ready to get out and roll someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in San Francisco.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, boxing gloves would have probably been a better choice if that was your mode of transportation. But you're fucking driving with paddles on.
Yeah, I just assume that's how all Prius drivers drive, and that's why they're so shitty at driving.
Yeah, see, the Prius is usually in the HOV lane though.
Yeah,
and I'm usually driving by myself. Or when I lived here, I was usually driving by myself. So they were kind of like, yeah, it was bad, but it was out of sight, out of mind. Right. It's the Camry is the less eco-friendly jackass.
Oh, okay.
That's all. Like, it's always a Camry, right? It's like, didn't Clem rent a Camry and fuck it up? See, it's always a Camry.
Camry was my first car.
Was it actually?
Yeah, my brother rode it off actually.
Oh, what, he put it into a ditch or something?
I think he went through a giveaway sign or something like that.
Oh, we got T-boned.
T-bone, yeah.
Was he wearing oven mitts?
I wouldn't totally discount it, knowing her brother.
Okay, all
right.
So it's a possibility.
Yeah, so that was one thing. I don't think I would ever take, if you look at the statistics of what's going to kill you, driving is probably the most likely. Right, but the crazy measures people go into to protect themselves from things that aren't even threats that makes them feel comfortable is like you have no idea what the actual hard numbers are of what's actually going to cause your mortality. It's like the Dumb and Dumber thing where it's like, you know, you're more likely to die on the way to the airport. Like everyone's like, oh, aren't you worried about flying? I was like, yeah, we got to drive to a lot of airports. That's the really dangerous part is getting in an Uber. So in Singapore, there's not Uber. There's an app called Grab. And then if it's not Grab, no, was it Singapore? No, it was Hong Kong where they all had those Toyotas, those boxy Toyotas. It was like, remember the red cars?
Yeah, the old school ones.
Yeah, there's like in Hong Kong, all the cabs are this one type of Toyota. It's like red, like it's like a 76 Toyota Avalon or something.
That's where they
It's like
go
the
to die.
shitty version of London where they have those like
black
taxis.
Yeah, except like these things like and these drivers. Imagine like if the Italian job wasn't in Italy with Mini Coopers, but it was in Hong Kong with 76 Toyota Avalons. These guys are fucked, man. They're like 100 miles an hour in a tin can. You're like, well, this is great. I'm going to just be a part of the pavement in Hong Kong.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, interesting. The stuff you see, man. So in the interest of poor transitions and poor openings, we're going to talk about alterations in training based off of gender differences.
Yeah.
Right, and sort of how that changes what we deem acceptable for volume, intensity, position, so forth. The first time this was actually a local Bay Area weightlifter who was complaining about her coach because her coach had her working up to singles going into a meet. And she didn't know the physiology or anything. She just knew that she always performed better when she worked at like a higher volume going into a competition.
Yeah.
Now, this is something I would imagine in weightlifting, it must be common. This can't be something that's like specific to this one girl.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing about weightlifting programming is weightlifters, for the most part, are fucking head cases. So it's very individual how people prep for a meet. But the things that I've noticed to have the biggest effect on programming towards a meet for specific populations are gender, absolutely. Women can tolerate a lot more volume, even a lot more volume at higher intensities than men typically can. The asterisk by that would be training age. The more trained someone is, I mean, I think we said on our podcast last week that I've been training more of my life than I haven't been training. So at this point, I do not need very much volume to retain those neurological skills. It's just kind of there. But someone who's been weightlifting for 3 months and they're leading into their first meet, you know, they're going to need to keep snatching, keep clean and jerking to keep that skill fresh so that they can have that sharp when they need to do it. Right, so they're going to need more volume in their training, even at higher intensities, and especially because they're not as trained, they're not as close to their full potential in what they can execute in a lift, so that they may be training at a very small percentage of their actual strength numbers, just because they don't have the skill to put that weight on the bar and actually snatch it. So it's a very small percent of what they're capable of, so they're not accumulating too much fatigue. And the third one is just absolute strength. Right? Someone like you who squats over 7 bills, someone like me who squats less than 5.
Come on.
What did I say there?
Round up. Always round up.
Almost 5. I can train more reps at 80% than you can train at 80% just because that weight, that absolute weight is going to have less of an effect on my nervous system than you. I'll be able to recover more quickly from that stimulus than someone who's lifting, you know, an incredible amount of weight. It's going to take longer for that to wear off and for that nervous system to recover from that.
Right. Now, moving into your world, like, I mean, Jordan's world of, like, Olympic weightlifting has such a specificity and skill component to it. Now, like, dealing with Gen Pop, and I want to frame this in what's the difference between training men as opposed to women rather than flipping it and making you guys the differentiating factor. You guys. I felt like Donald Cherry. Hey, he said, you people. All you women folk. No, like, what's the biggest difference you see in training, like, for body composition and differences, like, you know, you're around, like, men all the time in a gym setting, but all your clients that you work with online are majority female. What's the big differences?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, there's obviously, like, the physiological differences first up, like, between men and women. Like, women have about 9 times the amount of estrogen as men, and then men have 15 times the amount of testosterone as women. So the biggest thing is, like, when women come to me, they're, like, scared that they're going to put on this muscle mass from lifting, you know, like, higher volumes and things like that, putting on lots of muscle. Yeah, we just have to explain and, like, educate them through that, you know, like, you can't, like, just... Obviously, with the changes in in hormones as well. So definitely with Gen Pop, you know, higher volume, they're going to need that for that skill acquisition as well. And then also like less rest periods, things like that, like longer warm-ups to get that nervous system primed and things like that. Yeah, are the main things that I sort of deal with training females.
Yeah, the hormones thing is interesting because like it boils down in a few different ways. Because like now I feel like I'm gonna have to translate this for a non-Australian audience because estrogen is also known as estrogen on this side of the pond. It's the tomato.
What about Westrogen?
The Westrogen.
And
it's
the differentiating physical therapists and physiotherapists.
Right.
Like
you just don't. You might as well not even bother at this point. But like that. Like what that means, like, because I think guys get so afraid of like estrogen. I can't even say it. It sounds where it's like that's where a lot of the metabolic benefits that women actually are they're at an upper hand to men. A lot of those benefits in being able to handle higher volumes in training comes from their ability to better process and metabolize carbs and fats because of the presence or the increased presence of estrogen. Now, when we talk about absolute strength, now all of a sudden that 15 times more testosterone comes into play, right? Like Jiunta has a sweater on his face, and it's the same reason that, you know, he can have cap delts and not really do lateral raises, right? Because, I mean, he has a greater amount of the hormone testosterone in his body, and he has a greater amount of androgen receptors in his upper body. That's why you see a lot of women gravitating more towards lower body dominant splits, is because they have an equal ability to use those what androgens are available in their lower body because they have an equal amount of receptors relative to their mass, roughly speaking. Where it's like with a male, it's like they're going to be more upper body dominance, but because the recovery based off of their ability to utilize that increase in androgen receptivity in the upper body is that much greater. And so like the biggest difference I've seen in dealing with, I mean, I don't deal with half the amount of, or a quarter or a tenth of the amount of females that she works with, but it's like their ability to turn over greater output through their lower body and the lack of need for higher frequency through their upper body has been like a stark contrast in dealing with like the gym bros that I'll program for.
Yeah, and that's absolutely apparent in weightlifting as well, because weightlifting is a lower body strength sport. It's a core and shoulder stability sport. You shouldn't be using your arms to move a barbell in weightlifting, and you have these, 64 kilo women lifting more than 90% of the general population of men that are training for weightlifting. And it's just because there's that much more of an equal playing field where women typically have greater mobility than men. So they have all the tools to be really good at weightlifting, when especially men who are upper body dominant, they that's where their strength lies. Really bad for efficiency in weightlifting. So that's why the majority of the people that I train are women. I'd say it's probably 2/3 women, 1/3 men.
Yeah, and you sort of see that like people tend to gravitate towards what they're good at and what their body type sort of suits as well. Like you don't sort of see like swimmer, for example, like they'll have those broad shoulders that's going to make them good at swimming, rather than like.
Yeah, on the flip, and that's like the epigenetic expression, right? Like that's why people end up in, like, he's a really good wrestler because he was the size and shape of a wrestler when he was in, I don't know, you grew up in Pennsylvania when you were 6, so they probably made you wrestle.
Literally.
You're fighting chickens or something like that in a local cockfight. But it's like basketball. Like how many kids I know that didn't choose basketball? It's like the fact that you were 16 years old and hitting your head off the doorway into elementary school. Basketball chose them. 100%. Right. And then these are the people, like a lot of sports performance to me is, and this is where like countries who medal really well, especially in Olympic weightlifting, but in sports across the board, they identify markers in sports performance early and start to get into the continuum of general training into sports specificity based off of the markers that this person expresses for a particular sport.
Yeah, it's like institutionalized in other countries where it's, you can go be broke and try this sport if you want to go to the Olympics in America.
Imagine if the government snatched you up at 6. Like, here's this little cauliflower-eared pissant from like Dallas, Pennsylvania. It's like, you'd be a gold medalist right now, right? Because you have the size, the shape, and the build, and like the fiber typing and the conditioning and the mindset and everything. Like that's why China does so well. It's like at 4 they're eyeing up this kid with small feet going like, gymnast. Hi, Mr. Chan. Yeah, we're taking this. What? It's the most I think it's the most popular last name in China. I don't think I'm making that up or being like overly racist or anything. It's just I'm playing the numbers here, man. Come on.
It's a slippery slope from here. We're talking about cultures and genders and.
No, probably not. You listen to us enough. This is tame. There's women present. No, but like then all of a sudden those are the people who get the best coaching, right? Or what they think to be the best coaching, and then they get the best nutrition and the best emphasis on recovery, and like that's really like where the end, like in overlapping distributions, like you're always going to see the outliers at the top performing. Like so, what in the middle range where it's like, yeah, you go to local meet and you look at like relative body weight coefficients, or you look at like representations of. Like if you went to a meet in you're doing Columbus in a few weeks, right? Like, will there be a greater representation of Asian people doing that sport?
I mean, in America, probably not.
Right, but on the world.
In the world, yeah.
And at the world class level, on the podium, what are you going to see?
Oh yeah, it's going to be China across the board. There's Chinese lifters that currently hold world records that won't be at the Olympics because they're not going to be on the top of the podium.
That's hilarious. But that goes to show you, like, so here we take an average sample size of a population in America. It doesn't necessarily show a bias towards any certain thing. This is the midpoint of overlapping distributions. But we follow those overlapping distributions and the morphological predisposition to performance in that sport out to that podium. And all of a sudden, you're only left with one culture, or you're only left with Chinese people. Where it's like in Columbus, it's like, yeah, maybe a dude sneaks on the platform in a particular weight class, or a chick sneaks on the platform in a particular weight class. It's like there's no like clear divide and advantage in the middle point of the distribution, but it's like that's really not what we care about. We care about at the end tails who's wearing the gold medal at the end, and it's always going to be them, right? And that's something that we talk about all the time when it comes to like morphological predispositions between men and women. Like, we talk about Q angles in the hips a lot, and it's like, well, yeah, Q angles more often than not are going to be, when we see the greatest Q angles, it's going to be it's going to be a female. We see the greatest carrying angle in elbow, it's going to be a female. And that has to change the way you prepare for movement, and almost like change like what, I don't want to say like what you accept as standards of movement, because I think there are different standards of movement based off of like your morphology and your predisposition to be a certain presentation morphologically.
Yeah, so I think there needs to be certain boxes that get checked no matter who it is, but it's going to manifest differently from body proportions, gender, different factors such as prior injuries, current injuries, things like that are all going to affect the way that you move. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be moving in a, first off, safe, stable way to be able to do things like squats or presses or snatches, things like that.
Another thing I think is to make mention of is like the muscle fiber types. So like when you sort of see like towards the top end, that in more of the endurance sports, like that's where sort of it evens out between men and women. Like you sort of see women more in those endurance sports doing like just as well as men. Whereas like something like the 100-meter sprint, you see Usain Bolt, he's up there with like, no one else can sort of touch him. Yeah. So I think that comes down to like when you're training, like in your training, where women can sort of handle that more volume, higher intensity for longer. Yeah,
and that's something that can easily be factored into a program.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you might not have someone as a client who is necessarily, earmarked for a gold on the podium, but like if you could make subtle adjustments in tempo from men and women based off of fiber type, or volume based off of hormone distribution, or frequency of training body part based off androgen receptivity. Like if you make these small changes, it's like you have two controls, or you have one client and a control. One is, where we're taking into consideration the predisposition based off fiber type, based off hormones, based off difference in morphology and androgen receptivity. And we just make subtle changes in rest periods and training volume and frequency, intensity, duration. All of a sudden, you're going to see orders of magnitude at the tail end of their performance. You're going to start to see their ability to perform increase because you're playing to their hand, right? Like smashing you with volume 16 years into your lifting career, it's like that's not playing to your hand. It's like your training age is like you're 1,000 years old. You're like a 16-year-old cat. It's like Jiunta's about to die, right? Like, lifting is like adding 7 years to each one of your lives or each one of your years that you've lived. It's like he doesn't have much time left, and we know that. That's why we podcast.
Exactly.
Because we were mediocre at best, and it's only getting worse.
I'm on the downhill slide.
Shout out Instagram memories for letting us know how strong we once were. Saw that this morning.
It hurt.
What was that snatch?
That was 260, so like 118. So I snatched more than that this week. But
yeah, and your boy was looking thick in that picture too. Like you had some weight on the meat on the bones there.
No man, no more.
Get it back.
No,
no, you're done. After this, you're done. You're going out on an off season. You're never coming back.
Multiple ribeyes per day.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Because you're coming in at what, 71 kilos?
73. Come on, man.
I don't know,
Come
man.
on.
Dude, anything under 100, I can't conceptualize.
Well,
if I'm being honest.
I'll never get there.
The scale starts at 220 pounds for me. If I get below that, I'm in a hospital gown.
I don't want to see you weighing less than that.
It'd be bad. I'd be emaciated.
Yeah.
I think I would be unwell.
Yeah.
I'd be unwell at.
I mean, I've seen you at 110 for what, a whole period of 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
And then 8 minutes later, you were 130.
Yeah. What happened to Violet Beauregard over there? How come he's big and purple all of a sudden? Yeah. Well, powerlifting for health. But no, and I think like devoid of the sport, like, you know, we were drawing comparisons from like bodybuilding and powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting and barbell sports or like endurance and running. It's like these are always going to manifest in a positive benefit if we can understand them. I think like you end up in this super sensitive, like, oh, everyone's the same and no one's different. It's like that's either A, like a very ignorant way to approach training, and that's just like you're virtue signaling and saying that everyone gets to do the same stuff, or B, you're just naive to the because it's not a bad thing that you're different. Like, it's some days I wish I could train at higher intensity. Like if I'm not peaking for a meet, it's like that'd be great to be able to practice the skill of heavy lifting. Like there's a moment when you squat, like a 684 squat is like yeah. But dude, like listen, the difference between like the 20 or 15, 25 pounds, whatever it is, between 684 to 700 pounds, our toes just touched. That was weird. Quick, do something manly. I'm gonna move this the fuck over here.
We were looking each other in the eyes too.
But like that is to me for me and my lifting the most aggressive 26-pound jump ever. Like a 26-pound jump anywhere else in the barbell is almost unnoticeable. The second I cross that 700 plateau, it's like you unrock and it's like you've unlocked a new level of gravity. It's like fuck me, someone please turn these magnets off. And it's like when you do that, like it's a matter of that's a skill now. Like I have to unrack 700 pounds just to get used to that. Where it's like, and I can only do that very like peaking into a meet. I can't train at that level of intensity because I mean it's 55 pounds off my 1 rep max. Like I'm doing that a few weeks out from a meet. Imagine being able to practice that relatively close to your 1 rep max further out. You're going to get better at execution of that skill. Like that to me is it's not a difference or a disadvantage. Depending on how you frame it, it could be an advantage in your training.
Yeah, and it's just understanding that as well, and like knowing that that's what you need to do in your programming. Because for morale, for training morale as well, like if you're, you know, not hitting your numbers or whatever, and you like the program's not right, then you know that brings down your training morale, and then you're like, oh, like why can't I do this and all that sort of stuff. So getting the program right and understanding these differences like is super important. Same with cueing. Like if someone's not getting a movement or something like that, it's looking at the individual and like looking at, you know, their body structure and things like that, and the differences, and knowing the differences, and then programming and cueing around that, and like, you know, looking at technique and things like that to just get those 1%. Like it's all those tiny 1%ers that are just going to make the difference.
Yeah, I make the comparison to like dieting, right? Like if you look at the diets that do well, the diets that show the greatest amount of like acute weight loss from the get-go, right? That's like carb-phobic diets do well because you're just going to like retain less water because carbohydrates are predominantly water. It's C6H12O6. Like do the math, right? It's 3-to-1 water to carbs every single time. So you're going to, you know, the same caloric deficit, you're going to lose initially more weight just because you're not necessarily burning more calories and ending up in a net caloric deficit. You're just holding less weight, and then there's less weight to be read on the scale. right? And that'll lead to an adherence of whatever that diet is, right? Whatever that protocol is, whether it's whatever this carnivore nonsense is. And at the end of the day, it's like long term, the way you're going to do it is, there's a few factors, but obviously like net caloric deficit is going to be a big part of that. But the long-term research from a morale standpoint is like, look, if they're losing a lot of weight out of the gate, they're going to stick to it. Rather than like, I lost 1/4 pound this week. It's like, yay, I'm going to go eat 1/4 pound of M&Ms and go to bed. It's like, well, that's not going to work. So it's the same thing with training. It's like, if you can, if you're cueing for a female, like, your knees are coming into the hole, but you don't understand what a cue angle is, and all of a sudden it's like you're driving their knees out, but their knees are hurting, but you're seeing a position that's like, especially as an Olympic weightlifting coach, it's like, well, yeah, knees out, sure, yeah, tell that to the guy who's going to hit gold, and before he hits that gold, his patella is going to hit the fucking platform on the inside of his toes, right? It's with females, like with that inward trajectory of the quadriceps angle, or the increased trajectory of the femur from the pelvis, it's like, cueing knees out is going to be like a potential detriment to their morphology when executing a certain technique. And that could be from catching a snatch in the hole, or that could be from a leg press, trying to isolate the quads or hamstrings or whatever.
Yeah, and if you've got a coach yelling at you, knees out, and your knees like can't get any further out, you're going to be like, why can't I do this? Like, why aren't I getting this? Like, why aren't I doing it right? And that disappointment that you feel like when your coach is like telling you something and you just can't get it. It's like, well, like have a look.
Like when Fran tells you to like load the dishwasher properly. That disappointment you feel on a day-to-day basis. Because you do everything wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, I think of it like Super Troopers. You ever seen the movie Super Troopers? And like they're all like baked out of their bed. It's like, pull over. It's like, hey, he's pulled over. He can't pull over anymore. It's like, knees out. It's like relative to where my knees are in, they are out. But it's like, it's about not understanding. It's almost like physical empathy. Like being able to look at someone like, I know how that must feel, right? Like we had a dude in one of our courses in Calgary. How tall was that guy?
He was like 6'7" or something.
Yeah. I thought he was taller than that. He was out-angling people from his knees. He was super tall. But, like, the first thing you do when you see someone like that is, what must be like? Not even squatting. Like, getting out of bed in this morning. What's the BFG?
Big friendly giant.
Big friendly giant. My initial mindset was just a big fucking giant. Imagine just the task of getting out of bed in the morning and being 6'7" or whatever that is. This guy's got, like, a clear foot on you. Could you imagine walking around with on a step ladder?
No, I cannot.
Right, and then
I have to do a 2-foot jump to get to the ground out of bed.
Sticks the landing. Jiunta's there with a high level of difficulty. Yeah, but like just and that before we even get to the gym, like what kind of reps, what kind of miles are you putting on those joints just every single day before a barbell's involved, before a dumbbell's involved, before a leg press is involved? Then once you can be like physically empathetic to their condition, then you can start to like be mindful of cueing. Like I was guilty of that. Like, yeah, everyone's the same. Females that come in, knees out, oh, you're shit. Like, oh, do single leg work. Oh, that doesn't fix anything. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, then once you realize like the deck you're playing with, like, okay, now I understand how to manipulate these 1%. So she said.
Yeah, I think we all have this kind of preconceived notion of, what a squat should look like, what a deadlift or a snatch should look like, right? And a lot of times we have to switch that, especially when you're coaching, to see what does your squat look like and how can we make that better? Right? It's what does your squat need to look like based off of what you're working with right now. Not necessarily like, I want your squat to look this way because this is how I make people's squats look.
And this is how my squat looks.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of it starts. And that's across the board. Like, I used to be, when the guy like cut me off in traffic and flipped me off, I was like, I'm going to fucking follow this guy home. How do you like that? And then it's like, you know what? That guy probably had a really shitty day. Because I know when I flipped
This does not go through your fucking head.
No, it does now, man.
I call bullshit.
No, it does now. But it's the same thing of like being a bit more empathetic. It's like, I expect certain people to act a certain way, and that's the way I act. And then it's like, if people don't see that, then fuck them. It's like, no, fuck you, man. Like, it's on you. Like, you got to own your shit. And it's the same thing with that. It's like female, male, whatever. Like if they're not getting it, at the end of the day, as a coach, it's your fault.
And especially with females as well, you have to be a bit sensitive towards like certain parts of the cycle. Like I know this isn't a conversation for this podcast, but like There are certain times of the month when they're not feeling it and they're not going to be as strong, and you just sort of have to keep that like, well, let's do what we can sort of thing. And it's something that's not talked about enough, I don't think.
No, for sure. And it's relatable because like I know plenty of people that take drugs, performance enhancing drugs, and that messes with this 15-9 testosterone estrogen ratio. And the moodiest people I have ever met is dudes coming off gear. And it's like, so if anyone should be empathetic to that, but think of it from a coaching perspective. Like, okay, what would that maybe mean from a coaching perspective to keep the morality of winning the day, so to speak, at a all-time high? Go RPE scale. Don't look objectively. If we're entering into a time where it's like, okay, here's going to be potentially not feeling it, but we don't want to like lose the intent of the program because that's all we're trying to do is drive intent. Go RPE scale. Go reps in reserve.
Yeah, or even know before you program, like this is the time when, I might need a deload week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it might be a little different with just pure strength training or powerlifting, but in Olympic weightlifting, that's absolutely huge. It could be literally one of a million fucking factors. Like you had a shitty day at work, you got stuck in a car crash on the way to the gym. It will just like fry your nervous system, and you can't execute on that day. So there's no point to trying to hit these numbers that are on the paper for some abstract reason because they're in some point in a block periodization, just to try and hit them if it's going to look like shit, if you're going to put yourself at risk for injury, things like that. So I think that just has to be the overarching mindset to training in general, is that, yeah, there's numbers on the paper. You want to generally lift more weight over time, but it has to be variable in the way that you approach that. It has to be focus on execution of the skill at hand, right? That should be priority. And then if you can hit the numbers, that's great. But if you can't, that's why you should be working with the coach to identify these things before you go up and you put that weight on that bar and you start missing reps. Like, hey, why don't we just go a little bit lighter today and we'll get a little more volume in so that you can get that morale, you can boost your confidence, and then next week we'll come back and we'll smash this.
And the thing is with what she's talking about, it's like we have this information available to us if we make it available to us. And we're training females, and I've trained like a handful of females in powerlifting and like physique shows and WBFF and IFBB and stuff, and it's like that's like knowing that, hey, every 4 weeks you're going to run into a bunch of traffic on the way to the gym and your mortgage is going to get refinanced and you're going to default on like your student loans. Every 4 weeks that's going to happen. So it's like, if you know that, are ignorant to acquiring that knowledge of like, okay, this is just going to randomly happen, it'll fuck with our program and we'll react. It's like, no, but you can create around that, right?
Yeah, you can use it as an opportunity to recover maybe from some of the volume or some of the other, more harsh stimulus of the program during that week when it's going to be a down week anyways.
And same goes with diet as well. Certain times of the month as well, you sort of need to bring it back, and then other times you can have a little bit more because things are going on with metabolism and things like that. Body temperature rising, all those sort of physiological changes that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know in a couple of weeks after I step on that scale, I'm going to be pre-diabetic. That's maybe a different end of the spectrum.
Bring it back to type 3. That's the thing. We talk a lot about like one system. Like we talk about applied biomechanics, but we realize that like that is constantly in interface and in flux with the influence of every other system in the body, right? And like if you don't know, there are people who know. Just know when your jurisdiction ends. Like know your specialty. Be niche, I think. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm like jack of all trades. Like you are good for no one, right? Where it's like if you have a network of other people who are specialists, like, hey, I deal with a handful of clients now and I have it down to a bit of a routine, but like if there's something I don't know on the female side of things, cross the table. Like I have no idea what this is. It's like if I didn't know how to speak a language and like you spoke Mandarin and all of a sudden someone emailed me in Mandarin, I'd be like, oh, I know what he's saying, 100%. I recognize that emoji. I got the context. It's like, no, hey, dude, what does this say? And it's the same thing, like having people in your network or like knowing coaches that are specific to what your goals are that speak whatever language you have. And it's like, that's something that I see male coaches miss the boat on a lot when training females. It's like, if you're not making that consideration. And like, I think it's weird because like in the personal training space, when I was a trainer, men wanted to train with men and women wanted to train with men. I never understood the mindset of a female wanting to train with a man.
My first personal trainer was a man.
But I just think from like an understanding and an empathetic and an ability to actually be able to deal with and manage and predict and program accordingly, it's like I've always looked at that going like, and luckily for me, not luckily, but like it's outside of my direct skill set that not many females look at me and go, yes, this guy, this is what I want to look like.
I want to look like that.
I want to look like, I want to have a sweater on my face. But yeah, it's just something that like, especially with in the world of online coaching, it's like you see.
I just think it's not like really known or thought about. Like
more of a kind of like ignorance, like subconscious
exactly.
decision that this guy's big, he must know what he's talking
Yeah.
about, as opposed to this guy's big, I don't know if he can relate to me.
I think not a lot of people go through the requisite vetting process for a coach. It's an investment.
Well, you think about the person that's looking for a coach also, like not on the, more specified like Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting level, but people looking for a personal trainer, they don't really know the vetting process, right? They're seeking them out because they don't know, and they don't know what they should be looking for in that person.
Yeah, and I mean, like we've gone through the painstaking effort of releasing, I don't know how many hours, hundreds of hours of like podcasts. And like when people sign in with us, it's like, all right, you kind of know the general mindset that goes into our programs, like whether it's a corrective, whether it's one of our new programs coming up, whether it's our like weightlifting program, like you at least have an idea. Like you have an ability to vet people. Like if their credential is, oh, it's because I'm jacked. It's like, well, they have schools now. And it's like, that's not really the only credential you can kind of rest your hat on. But I think we ran into the same thing, and I'm sure you the same, like people coming to us with interest in seeking services from a chiropractor, a physio. It's like, I don't know what makes a good physio. And it's like, yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know what makes a good chiro. It's like, yeah, it's a really good question. I don't really know. Go talk to people, and then talk to people that aren't on like Yelp. Because like Instagram for coaching credentials is like the Yelp of medical credentials.
Yeah. I think understanding, like someone who understands human movement.
And someone you can relate to, too. I have a lot of people come in because they're like, oh, yeah, I was seeing this chiro, but he doesn't work out. And
Yeah.
like,
He doesn't work here anymore. His name was Jordan Shallow, and now he was a bit of an asshole. So I want to see you because I heard you're nicer.
And someone who empowers you as well, like to take control of your injuries and your things like that rather than relying on someone.
And as a coach, that's what you should want. Like I've fired a few clients just because it's like, look, this isn't a forever kind of thing. And there are people who, when you explain that to them, they'll be with you forever. They'll know how to do it. They just want to know that you're there, which is cool.
Don't set them up to rely on you.
Yeah, which is like an abstract business concept. But that's, people will either A, they'll stay with you because they want that, they have that trust built into someone who's not scarce, or B, they'll just refer all of their friends to you and you'll have an endless caseload of online clients or in-person clients.
exactly. The only training I really do right now is rehabilitation. People with injuries that, can't seem to sort it out. So with that, I'd say there's an expiration date on this. Like I don't want to hold your hand forever. I want to work with you for, maybe 3 months, and then I want you to be able to do this stuff on your own for yourself, or take it to the next step where you can work with a coach and you know what you need to do to be able to do that safely. In my mind, I'm thinking like, all right, when can I get rid of this guy? Not really. But the idea is I want turnover there so that these people can see their success, and then it's a positive outcome. And that's a way better business model than holding on to these people, keeping them literally crippled for X amount of time.
Yeah, this is why, like, all three of us, like, we're clinicians, and we've all sort of transitioned from that more sort of hands-on manual therapy type treatment to more of that, like, independent, active treatment through movement and exercise.
Yeah, I mean, because it takes more than a couple hours a week in an office, right? Like, it's like, how is this 7'6" guy, or ever fucking tall he was, like, what is the impact on his day-to-day? Like, how is being this creature on earth, like, how is that detrimental? And two, if you can get someone like that back, it's like, I guarantee you they're gonna bend it till it breaks again, right? Like, you'll be back. It's like you're the Frank White of therapy. It's like you lay the blue magic, and it's like those fuckers are coming back every time. It's like but that's what you want though, right? Because that's how you are as a patient, right? Like, get me back, get me off the bench, get me in the game. So I can like go hard in the paint until right, exactly. So it's like, when I was in practice, it'd be like, you'd see someone, you work with the knee or whatever for like a few months, and then they go away and you don't see him for a year, and then they call you like, oh, I'm that guy like you saw about his knee last year. Like, oh yeah, how's the knee? Oh, knee's great, but I went like wakeboarding or like heli skiing. I fucked up my elbow. It's like, hey, come by. But that's playing like the long game too, right? Like, a lot of people are just in it for like the visceral spike. Like, yeah, then do the scarcity thing and keep everyone under your flag. But if you're playing it for the long game, it's like you get 70, 80 patients like that. Like, you're sweet. Like, you're laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah. Well, your business is your clients, right? Like, if you work with those clients that want a quick fix, and that's the culture that you create within people that you train, then they're going to be the people that you're going to work with forever, is these people that want you as a crutch, as opposed to if you work with these people that want to actually get better. And that's the precedent that you set, is that no. You're not going to come in here 3 times a week. I'm going to snap your neck and you're going to be all dandy. I'm going to help you through this. We're going to manage the acute injury here, and I'm going to give you a long-term plan so that this doesn't happen again. And then these people have the mindset of, I'm going to get better from this, as opposed to, this is my injury. I now have a bad back. I now have a bad knee, that lifelong diagnosis. So you have to create that culture for your clients, and then that will be the type of people that you attract and that you put back out into the world.
Yeah, it's trust.
That was very metaphysical and Silicon Valley of you. You use the word culture and like put out into the world in the same sentence. Dude, I don't know if they're going to recognize you in Dallas, Pennsylvania.
Oh, man. They don't want me back. They don't want me here, but they don't want me back there.
I know the feeling. That's why I have to go everywhere. After 4 days in a place, like, yeah, dude, you got to go. Big takeaways, I think, like getting back to the main point is like differences in gender between men and women when it comes to training adaptations. One of your biggest.
Just cycling volume and intensity differently and paying attention to how that affects them. So it doesn't always have to be this equals that for this person. It's a trial and error thing, no matter who you're with. But the more error you have, the more you can fine tune that. So you might know that you have, I might know that my 55 kg women can lift, singles at 90% 3 days before their meet and still hit a PR on the platform, when, my 35 to 40 masters athletes that have been through 3 different sports and training in different capacities in their whole life, they might have to hit 80% singles 7 days out to recover to be able to perform on the platform. Being able to recognize the differences and apply them appropriately to those certain populations in training volumes and intensities.
I think just being sensitive to like the mindset and the programming around certain times of the month, and just understanding, women think they're going to lift weights and they're going to like bulk up, or if they feel like they're not executing exercises correctly and they're getting frustrated and things like that. I think just being empathetic to that as well, and just understanding like their lifestyle and things like that, and like what else is going on, just like treating people as a whole as well.
That's why we need her here.
Yeah, because
yeah, right.
Because my answer is Q angle and carrying angle, because I want people to have big legs and big arms. It's like know how to put tension through a bicep and a quad.
Yeah,
yeah. We're insensitive people. Yeah. That's why. As the last 155 episodes have.
Coaching calls just tend to be more like psychological, like what's going on in their life, and like I didn't hit this because of this, and like this happened this week, and blah blah blah. So I mean, like not blah blah blah. Like you're sensitive to it, but like
how many coaching calls that she gets
and
off
it's
of.
The same with treating patients as well. Like they are therapy sessions.
Oh, absolutely.
Every city we go to, we have dessert recommendations because of the follow-up calls that she does with her clients. It's just like, and that's how it ends. It's like, yeah, I'm going to this dessert place this weekend. Oh, where is that? And it's like, all of a sudden we're like, oh, we got to get this peanut butter Nutella cheesecake thing that they just throw in your face at this city. It's like, wait, who are you just on the phone with? It's like, oh, I was just talking to one of my clients. I was like, what are you exactly coaching them for? It's like, oh, no, we were talking about like fitting it into their macros.
They want their peanut butter cheesecake. Yeah, we'll fit it in.
Yeah, so I don't fit it in. I just add it on. Yeah, sweet. Well, we totally skipped over the whole intro thing. This is one of the rare times that we have a different chromosome or someone who doesn't look just like me sitting across the room.
People noticed? I think they noticed by now.
It's like maybe Jiunta's gone sub 70 kilos and his voice went high. We usually do this at the beginning.
Okay.
Or actually, we don't, because there's no usual. Brief introduction to the sultry sound that hasn't been me and my other bearded friend here.
So I'm Kayla. I'm a physiotherapist. I've been playing sports my whole life. Like grew up playing sports. Transitioned after school into doing a degree in exercise and sports science as my undergraduate, and when I was doing that I was also a coach and personal trainer, so I've been doing that for about 8 years now, and I've been a physiotherapist for 5 and been out of practice for 5 years, but sort of more switched over from more of the heavy manual therapy side of things into more of the movement-based rehab through exercise.
And where can people find you?
Where can people find me? They can find me on the internet.
Right.
That's for sure.
That's where you live.
Yeah. So at Kayla Lee Physio on Instagram. My website's kaylaleephysio.com. I'm usually found all over the place now, homeless, traveling with this guy right over here. This voice that everyone recognizes.
And then you're Jiunta at Red, White, and Jordan.
I'm Jiunta. You guys don't want to find me.
No, you find him and you follow him for the latest updates on Big Dick Kels DeWong and AR-15s and Budweiser. Yeah, so that's it for today's episode. Be sure in the next coming months, we have something coming up on prescript.com. So what I suggest you guys doing, because we really suck about talking about this on the podcast, is go to www.pre-script.com and subscribe to the mailing list. We're going to be kind of releasing some free content leading into a new program they're putting out. So if you guys are interested in that, go get your name on the mailing list and you guys will be the first to know. If nothing else, we'll see you guys next time.